Hey guys, Pete the Great, and today I'm here to talk to you about One Piece chapter 894, 12:05 a.m. This chapter, a lot happened, so let's get right into it. So, this week's chapter was very interesting from the get-go. The cover story was actually pretty cool because we got to see that the Tontaras, who are part of the Straw Hat Pirate Alliance, are actually going to be present as escorts of the Dressrosa royal family, the Riku family, to the Reverie. Now, that's all good, but that's not why we're here. We're here to see what's happening with Katakuri and Luffy. So the chapter starts off with a flashback. Now, my initial reaction was like, oh, really? But this flashback actually had some pretty neat things. First of all, we get to see Rayleigh, which is always a good thing. And we get to see a bit of Luffy's training, which is also a good thing. So it starts off with Rayleigh and Luffy actually training Luffy to gain observation hockey, and we see that Luffy's been hit multiple times by Rayleigh, who's then telling him to avoid the attacks, and that if he can avoid 100 attacks, he won't be able to eat. Then Luffy senses food, and he's reaching, and he attacks and actually knocks over Rayleigh's supper, and we get a little gag with Rayleigh actually being really pissed off and actually hitting Luffy, and at the same time trying to pass a lesson to not just attack wildly and without any plan. So that was pretty much what we got from the first few pages of the flashback. But then afterwards, what was really interesting is Rayleigh's assessment of Luffy's observation hockey, because he states that Luffy, contrary to most, is not really he's not really good at like sensing attacks, but he can sense not emotions but people's like aura, and like as he says, he sensed anger. Instead of sensing the attack, he would sense like the intent behind it, and that's how he kind of is more well versed in observation hockey. It's observational hockey, but it's not what really was kind of anticipating Luffy to be able to learn and to be really like good at. Personally, I think it has to do with the voice of all things, which is really different from Katakuri's future sight, because he can know what you're about to say, he can know how you'd look like in the future, and it was really more precise in Katakuri's case. And Rayleigh even states in this flashback, he says some people can even see a glimpse of the future. What will you do when you're confronted to them? And then Luffy just says, well, I guess it depends on their personality, to which Rayleigh replies, I never even thought of that. So then again, we get to see classic Luffy, thinking outside the box. So right after the flashback, we actually get to see what Luffy sees when he tries to see the future. And we see that it's more aura-like than Katakuri, as I just said. So he's dodging and dodging and dodging. After there's a little panel where we see like kind of ghostly, kind of like how Brook looks when his soul emanates from him, like that cloud of smoke. So one might think that Luffy was actually going to get the upper hand in this fight, just because now he can actually dodge some of Katakuri's attack. But as we see a few more times in the chapter, Katakuri still has the upper hand in the vast majority of times. So what we see the page after we see Luffy dodging is actually one of Katakuri's punches connecting, Luffy trying to block a punch, and then his arm throbs and we get the like prickle noise sound effect. Now last week's chapter gave us one instance of Katakuri using some of Luffy's attack in his mochi kind of way, and this week the fight sequence is no different. We actually get another Luffy attack that has been Katakuriized. Grilled mochi, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of vibes of Red Hawk. Although in Katakuri's case, his fist actually explodes and then he can reform it. So once again proving that the mochi fruit is actually superior to the rubber fruit in almost every way, really. Afterwards, he surges right back up and cocks Katakuri in the mouth, making you think that perhaps there's a chance that this fight might actually get back on a even ground. Now the next page, we get information that it's 10:10 p.m. And since the chapter is entitled 12:05, we know there's like still 2 hours left to the whole chapter, which means that the chapter's pacing was actually pretty fast, because last week's chapter, Sanji said, there's 3 hours left, and now we're approximately 1 hour left. What we see on that page is we see Beige and his crew. They're still being chased by Big Mom, and we see that they have a plan to go to Liquor Island and like give her the cake and then escape. But then Chiffon goes on to say, Liquor Island isn't far enough. So she says we have to take her all the way to another island, which I forget the name at the moment. And basically the rest of the crew are like, what? Are you serious? We're already the bait. And, you know, they're basically like, we don't want to die for them. We owe them a favor, so we're paying it back. But we're not going to go to the extent of going all the way over there. And then they say that, like, Big Mom already looks hungry as hell. And boy, we get a panel of Big Mom. And, I mean, she was butt ugly before. But right now, yo, she's entering brulee territory. She's entering straight up witch territory. It's really not pretty. And then, you know, we get a few panels where we see Luffy actually getting pummeled, like straight up pummeled by Katakuri, and a few skips in time, you know. So the first skip in time, it's like it was 10:10 I think, and now it's 10:50. And we see Luffy getting punched, and then we see the Straw Hats. We see Jinbei is at the helm. We see Nami telling Jinbei to swerve to the left or to the right, and like another one's coming, and then we're like, oh, what's coming? And then what we see is that Smoothie is actually like, she's actually giant size now, and like to the point that her crew is like, whoa, stop growing, otherwise the ship will capsize. And she's sending those Zoro type huge sword slashes towards the ship, and the ship is escaping them due to Jinbei's helmsmanship. And we see that Smoothie is actually pretty upset, and she goes like, oh, that damn Jinbei. And then we get a few questions from the Straw Hat, like Brooke actually says, is she a giant? We get to see that Carrot's well, you know, she gets up and she's like, well, she's interacting with the rest of the crew, so, you know, the after effects of Sulon form are, well, they may be present, but they're not hindering her as much as before. Then we see another panel of Luffy getting his ass kicked before having another skip like 20 minutes ahead. I think it's like 11:10 or 11:05. And we see Sanji and Pudding actually heading towards Coco Island, and Sanji is actually saying, yeah, I will definitely save my captain. And Pudding, you know, in typical Pudding fashion, is like all like she's blushing because she's all flustered because of what Sanji's saying. After that, there's another skip in time, and we get introduced to a lot of missing Charlotte family members, and we also get to see Snack. And I think there's something that Oda tried to put in this chapter about Snack. We see his bounty is actually 600 million, so he's not as strong as Cracker. He's not as strong as Cracker. He's not as strong as Smoothie. He's not as strong as Katakuri. He's actually, I won't say underwhelming, but I mean he's like Luffy by the time this arc ends could have his bounty, you know. So I was like, okay, whatever. You're ex Sweet Commander, but at least it's good to know that, you know, Urouge didn't kill you, because then you'd look really weak. And Snack is actually saying, like, all we see him say is worst generation ... So who knows? Will he have a fight with a member of the worst generation in this arc, like trying to redeem himself? The only member actually present is either Capone or Luffy, which would be really interesting because Luffy will have beaten like fought three of the Sweet Commanders of Big Mom's crew, which would then make her totally irrelevant as an antagonist, I personally think, in the future of the series. And then we get to the final part of the chapter, which has Katakuri actually be super pissed at Luffy because Luffy is crumbling already, and you know, he's like, is this finished already? And then Luffy gets up like wobbly and saying, I'm going to end this. And then like a weird dialogue ensues. we have Luffy say, if after this you're still up or whatever, then ... and then Katakuri ends his sentence with you've already given your answer, and then Luffy goes and says, Gear forth, Snake Man. Bro, I don't know what to expect, like, at all. I have no idea. The only thing I can see happening is maybe, you know how snakes, they have like this, they have this tongue with like feelers on them. Maybe he gets like super aware. Maybe it's a form where like he's boosting his observation instead of boosting his armament. Maybe he's boosting both. Maybe he's less he has less destructive power, but he compensates it with more like awareness and more agility. You know, maybe he slithers around like a snake more, but he's not as deadly as his Pound Man, but he's still, you know, pretty it's still a big boost compared to his base form. But the biggest boost is his actual evasiveness and agility and speed, because if that happens, I personally think that it's possible for him to for a short while overcome Katakuri, to the point where, because he stabbed himself, because they've been fighting for hours, because he took a few hits, I'm not gonna say a lot, but he took a few hits, and maybe because he didn't eat his snack fully, like his merienda got interrupted, maybe for all those reasons, that short little amount of time where Luffy will like basically give him the Doflamingo treatment after Luffy went Gear 4th, that might be enough. And in no way will I say that Snake Man puts Luffy above Katakuri, because it took him all this fight to get to that level. So I'm guessing there's a pretty big drawback. So with that being said, that's pretty much my thoughts for the chapter. When I read it initially, I was stoked. This chapter is a 10 out of 10 because it went forward. We got to see Rayleigh. We get to see that Chiffon is actually still, like, she still feels indebted towards the Strat. So she's going to go even further than they originally planned. We get to see that Big Mom is really in bad condition, and we get to see the final Sweet Commander. So with all this being said, that's pretty much it for my review. It's a long one, I'm sorry. And yeah, don't forget to leave a like, comment if you enjoyed this video. And always, it's a great pleasure when I see that subscriber number going up. So goodbye.